Jesus Christus. Praise be Jesus Christ. And welcome to this morning's live broadcast of Pope Francis' address to authorities and representatives of civil society at the Castle of Vatican in Belgium. My name is Christopher Wells, and I'll be providing the English language commentary for today's encounter, including an English translation of the Pope's speech. And you can hear the Holy Fathers arriving now.
Seine Heiligkeit, Papst Franziskus, Ihre Majestäten der König und die Königin.
In the company of the King and Queen of Belgium. And with the introduction in various languages that you heard, as the Pope approaches the stage, I would like to welcome all of you joining us through the various Vatican media channels, the Vatican Audio Radio app, the Vatican News Web portal or YouTube channel, or via one of our partner stations, including EWTN TV, Catholic Faith Network in America, Salt and Light TV, Radio Maria England, Shalom World TV, Atmadarshan TV, Catholic TV, Luminous Radio India, and Radio Maria Papua New Guinea. A very warm welcome, one and all. And you just heard a very warm round of applause from the gathered political leaders and civil authorities. Pope is being seated and will be introduced here in just a moment. The Pope arrived at the castle just a few moments ago and is
Quelle joie de vous accueillir ici parmi nous.
Being greeted by the King.
Votre mission apostolique.
Your Holiness, what a joy it is to welcome you here today, nearly 30 years after the visit of Pope John Paul II. Your apostolic mission, passed down from St. Peter, firmly upholds the great Christian tradition, while also reflecting your highly respected character. Aware of the upheavals facing our world, you have placed the fight against all forms of injustice at the heart of your vocation.
Apporte espérance et lumière jusqu'aux périphéries de la grande famille humaine.
Your words, reflections, and actions offer hope and light to the most distant reaches of the human family. Your recent journey to Southeast Asia is a perfect illustration of this. You deliver a message of life to all humanity, whether meeting the poorest, the most distant, or those most deeply affected by climate change and forgotten wars. We support your efforts because only peace can pave the way for development, education, healthcare, and social justice. Holy Father, you have condemned the unspeakable tragedy of sexual abuse within the Church in the strongest possible terms. And you have taken tangible steps to combat these horrific acts.
Werd kinderen een vreselijk leed aangedaan, dat ze voor de rest van hun leven zullen meedragen.
Children have been deeply wounded, scarred for life. The same is true for the victims of forced adoption.
Het heeft zo lang geduurd.
It has taken far too long for their cries to be heard and acknowledged. It has taken far too long to begin looking for ways to repair the irreparable. We recognize the efforts of the Church in Belgium in this regard, efforts which must continue resolutely and relentlessly. Holy Father, your life and actions are defined by your selflessness.
Für unser gemeinsames Haus, die Erde.
Tirelessly you work for our shared home, the earth, for the complete development of every individual, and for dialogue among the philosophical, spiritual, and religious ideas. Most Holy Father, you have rightly condemned what you have insightfully called a Third World War fought piecemeal. Today we welcome you, Your Holiness, as a pilgrim who carries a universal message of peace, reconciliation, and justice. You remind us that every person is destined to be loved and to love. This humanistic and spiritual vision has always been central to the universities of Louvain, which this year celebrate their 600th anniversary and have brought you here to us. I know how eager the students and their professors are to meet you tomorrow and the following day and to share their concerns with you. Their commitment to tackle the major challenges aligns with the very values of the universities of Louvain. Holy Father, the Belgian people are generous and welcoming. These qualities also characterize our civil society, many of whose representatives are present today. Civil society makes an important contribution to the fight against injustice and exclusion. In this context, how could we fail to remember Father Damien, who gave his life for the most excluded? He remains an example to us all. Holy Father, we hope that your visit will give you the opportunity to discover the generosity and hospitality of the Belgian people. Most Holy Father, it is with great honor and on behalf of these generous people that I welcome you. The words of His Majesty. Philippe, the King of Belgium. Introducing our Holy Father, Pope Francis, who will now address Belgian authorities and representatives of civil society.
Votre Sainteté, Sire, Mesdames et Messieurs, je vous souhaite la bienvenue en Belgique. Cela fait maintenant près de 30 ans que notre pays a reçu la visite du chef de l'Église catholique. Votre engagement en faveur de la paix et de la compréhension mutuelle entre les différentes cultures.
So we first have the discourse from the Belgian Prime Minister, Alexandre De Croo.
Notre société est fondée sur le respect et le dialogue entre les communautés. À une époque où la distance entre les communautés semble se creuser, nous accordons une valeur cardinale à la puissance du dialogue. Il nous incombe d'offrir à nos citoyennes et à nos citoyens un avenir construit non pas sur la peur et la méfiance, mais sur la solidarité et le respect mutuel. La Belgique, forte de ses valeurs, prend ses responsabilités. Notre action prend appui sur un ordre mondial fondé sur les droits humains et sur la justice. La guerre en Ukraine nous rappelle une dure réalité. La paix n'est jamais acquise. Et les artisans de la paix doivent se montrer déterminés. La Belgique se tient aux côtés du peuple ukrainien sans aucune faille. Et nous continuerons à soutenir sa quête de paix et de sécurité. Le conflit au
Your
Moyen-Orient.
Holiness, Sire, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Belgium. It's now almost 30 years since our country received a visit from the head of the Catholic Church. Your commitment to peace and mutual understanding between different cultures and faiths is greatly appreciated. Our society is founded on respect and dialogue between communities. At a time when the distance between communities seems to be widening, we place a cardinal value on the power of dialogue. It's our responsibility to offer our citizens a future built not on fear and mistrust, but on solidarity and mutual respect. Belgium, strengthened by these values, is assuming its responsibilities. Our action is based on a world order founded on human rights and justice. The war in Ukraine reminds us of a harsh reality. Peace can never be taken for granted.
Diverse geloofsgemeenschappen leven in onze seculiere samenleving vreedzaam naast en met elkaar.
And peacemakers must be determined. Belgium stands steadfastly by the Ukrainian people, and we will continue to support their quest for peace and security. The conflict in the Middle East is a good illustration of the consequences of self-defense that flouts international law. The law of the strongest reigns supreme. There is a way out, but it is imperative that the hostages be freed and that the people of Gaza return to dignified living conditions. War is always a defeat for community. Your Holiness, Belgium has changed dramatically since your predecessor's visit. A few decades, the spirituality of many Belgians looks completely different. Diverse faith communities live peacefully alongside and with one another. The Church has its place in our history and in our customs, in our holidays and in our culture. Faith provides a foothold for many. We cannot ignore the painful wounds that exist within the Catholic faith community and wider society. The many cases of sexual abuse and of forced adoptions have severely damaged the Church. have done severe damage. You are committed to justice. The Church's ministers work with conviction and charity. But when something goes wrong, we cannot accept a cover-up. This damages everyone's valuable work. Today, therefore, mere words are not enough. Concrete steps must also be taken. The victims must be heard. They must be at the center. They have a right to the truth. The atrocities must be acknowledged, and justice must be done. This is not only a moral obligation, but also a necessary step to regain trust.
Dat is niet alleen een morele verplichting, maar ook een noodzakelijke stap om het vertrouwen terug te winnen. Menselijke waardigheid dient voorop te staan, niet de belangen van het instituut. Om de blik opnieuw voorwaarts te kunnen richten, dient de kerk in het reine te komen met haar verleden. Uw heiligheid, vele gelovigen kijken vol verwachting.
Your Holiness, many believers eagerly await
Uw bezoek kan inspireren
your acknowledgement of misdeeds,
en kan religies ook
and justice must be done.
om verbondenheid te zoeken. De Belgen nodigen u uit om stil te staan bij de uitdaging
Many believers
van onze
are
moderne samenleving.
eagerly awaiting your arrival.
Dat uw tijd in ons land u vele nieuwe inzichten kan brengen.
Your visit can inspire to build bridges and can also encourage religions to seek communion. Belgians invite you to reflect on the challenges of our modern society. I hope your time in our country brings new insights. Thank you. And apologies for the rough translation there on my part. We'll now have the words of the Holy Father.
Vostra Maestà, Signor Primo Ministro, Fratelli Vescovi, distinte autorità.
Your Majesties, Mr. Prime Minister, Brother Bishops, distinguished authorities, ladies and gentlemen.
Ringrazio Vostra Maestà
I thank Your Majesty
per la cordiale
for your cordial
accoglienza
welcome
e il cortese indirizzo
and kind words of greeting.
Sono molto lieto di visitare il Belgio.
I am very pleased to be
Quando si
visiting
pensa a questo
Belgium.
paese,
When I think of
si
this
evoca
country,
contemporaneamente qualcosa di
what comes to
piccolo
mind
e
is
di
something
grande.
small yet
Un
great.
paese occidentale
A country in
e
the
al tempo
West
stesso
that at the
centrale,
same time is also
come
at the
se fosse
center,
il cuore pulsante di un
as if Belgium were the
gigantesco
beating heart
organismo.
of an enormous
In
organism.
effetti, le
Indeed,
proporzioni e
it would be a
l'ordine
mistake to
delle
judge the quality of a
grandezze
country
ingannano.
by
Il
its
Belgio non è
geographical
uno
size.
stato molto stesso, ma la sua peculiare storia ha fatto sì
Belgium may not be a
che
large state,
subito
yet its
dopo la fine della
particular
Seconda
history
Guerra
has been
Mondiale
impactful.
i popoli
Immediately after the
europei
Second World War,
stanchi
the
e sfiniti
exhausted and
iniziarono un serio
downhearted
cammino
peoples of
di
Europe,
pacificazione,
and beginning a profound
collaborazione
process
e
of peace,
integrazione, hanno
cooperation, and
guardato al
integration,
Belgio come
looked to your
sede
country as a
naturale
natural location to
delle
establish key
principali
European
istituzioni
institutions.
europee.
This was because
Per il
Belgium was on
fatto
the
di
fault line
essere sulla linea di faglia tra mondo
between the
germanico e mondo
Germanic and
latino,
Latin worlds,
confinante con Francia e Germania, che più
sandwiched between
avevano
France and Germany,
incarnato
two
le
countries
antitesi
that had most
nazionalistiche
embodied
alla
the
base
opposing
del
nationalistic
conflitto
ideals
e
underlying the
sfruttarle
conflict.
come luogo ideale, quasi una sintesi dell'Europa, da cui ripartire per la sua ricostruzione fisica, morale e spirituale. Si direbbe che il Belgio sia un ponte tra il
We could
continente
describe Belgium
e le
as
isole
a bridge between the continent and the
tra
British
l'area
Isles,
di matrice
between the
germanica e quella
Germanic and
francofona,
French-speaking regions,
tra il sud e il nord
between southern
dell'Europa.
and northern Europe.
Un ponte per permettere alla
A
concordia
bridge
di
enabling concord to
espandersi
spread
e di
and
far
disputes to abate.
indietreggiare le controversie. Un ponte dove
bridge
ciascuno, con la sua
where all
lingua, la
people,
sua mentalità,
with their own
le sue
languages, ways of
convinzioni,
thinking, and
incontra
beliefs,
l'altro e
can meet
sceglie la
others
parola,
and choose
il dialogo,
conversation,
la condivisione
dialogue,
come
and
mezzo
sharing
per
as the means of
relazionarsi.
mutual interaction.
Un luogo dove si impara
A place
a
where
fare
all
della
can learn
propria
to make
identità
their own
non un
identity
idolo o una
not an
barriera,
idol or
ma
barrier,
uno spazio ospitale
but a
da cui
welcoming place
partire e a
from
cui
which to begin
ritornare,
and then
dove
return.
promuovere validi
A place for promoting
interscambi e
valuable
cercare
personal
insieme
exchanges,
nuovi equilibri,
seeking
costruire
together new
nuove
social
sintesi.
stability and building new
Il Belgio
agreements.
è un ponte che favorisce
Belgium, a
i
bridge that
commerci,
promotes trade,
mette in comunicazione
connects
e
and
fa
brings
dialogare
cultures
le
into
civiltà.
dialogue.
Un ponte dunque indispensabile
An indispensable
per
bridge, then,
costruire la pace
for building
e
peace
ripudiare la guerra.
and rejecting war.
Si comprende bene allora
It is thus
quanto
easy
sia
to
grande il
see
piccolo Belgio.
how great little
Si
Belgium
capisce
really
come
is,
l'Europa
how
ne abbia
Europe needs
bisogno
Belgium
per ricordare
to
a se
remind it
stessa la sua storia,
that its history
fatta di popoli, culture,
comprises peoples and
cattedrali,
cultures,
università,
cathedrals
di
and
conquiste
universities,
dell'ingegno umano, ma
achievements
anche
of
da
human
tante
ingenuity,
guerre,
but also many
e di
wars
una volontà di
and the will to
dominio
dominate
che è
that
diventata
sometimes
poi
led to colonialism and
colonialismo
exploitation.
sfruttamento. L'Europa ha bisogno del Belgio
Europe
per
needs
portare
Belgium
avanti il
in order to
cammino di
continue
pace e
along
di
the path of
fraternità
peace and
tra
fraternity
i popoli che
among
la
its
compongono.
peoples.
Questo paese ricorda a tutti gli altri
Indeed, this
che,
country is a
proprio
reminder
sulla
to all
base
others
delle più
that
gravi
when
sopravvivenze
nations
scosse,
disregard
si
borders or
comincia
breach
a non
treaties
rispettare più
by employing the
confini
most
e
varied and
trattati
untenable
e
excuses,
si lascia alle armi il
and
diritto di
when they
creare
use
diritto,
weapons to replace
sovvertendo
actual
quello
law
vigente, si scopercia il vaso di Pandora.
with
E
the
tutti
principle of
i
might is
venti
right, then they
cominciano a
open Pandora's
soffiare
box,
violenti,
unleashing violent
squassando
storms
la
that batter the
cassa
house,
e
threatening
minacciando di distruggere.
to destroy it.
In questo momento storico
In this historic
credo
moment,
che il Belgio
I believe that
ha
Belgium
un ruolo molto importante.
has a very important role.
Siamo
We are
vicini a una guerra
close to a war,
quasi mondiale.
this
La concordia e la
worldwide
pace infatti non
possible
sono una
conflict.
conquista che si ottiene una volta per tutte, bensì un compito.
Moreover, peace and harmony are never once for all. On the contrary, they are a duty and a mission that needs to be undertaken unceasingly, with great care and patience. For when human beings
quando smette di fare memoria del passato,
forget the memory of the
fare
past
memoria del passato e di lasciarsene istruire,
and its valuable
possiede la
lessons,
sconcertante
they run the
capacità
dangerous
di
risk
tornare a cadere
of once again falling
anche
backwards,
dopo che si sia finalmente rialzato,
even after having finally moved on, forgetting the
i
suffering
costi spaventosi
and the appalling costs
dalle generazioni
paid by
precedenti.
previous generations.
Questo la memoria non funziona, è
And
curioso.
in this, memory doesn't work. It's strange.
Siano
Even if perhaps
nella
there are
società, nelle
in
persone,
society
ci fanno cadere sempre nelle stesse cose.
who've done
In
evil in the
questo,
same kinds of
in
things.
questo senso il Belgio
In this
è
regard,
quanto mai prezioso per la memoria
Belgium
del
is more essential than
continente
ever for keeping alive the memory
europeo.
of the
Essa,
European
infatti, mette a
continent.
disposizione
Indeed, it provides an
argomenti
irrefutable argument
inoppugnabili per sviluppare
for
un'azione
developing
culturale, sociale e
a
politica
timely and continuous
costante
cultural,
e
social,
tempestiva,
and
coraggiosa
political
e insieme
movement
prudente, che escluda
that at
un
the same time is
futuro
both courageous
in cui
and prudent.
nuovamente
A movement that
l'idea
excludes from the
e la
future
prassi
the
della
idea
guerra
and the practice of
diventino
war
un'opzione per
as a
correggere
viable option
con
with all its
conseguenze
catastrophic
catastrofiche.
consequences.
La storia, lo sappiamo,
We know
ma
history.
vite, ma resta della vita.
Furthermore,
Troppo
history is
spesso
often unheeded.
inascoltata.
Is the often
Dal Belgio
unheeded
chiama l'Europa a
Magistra Vitae,
riprendere
teacher of life,
il suo
and Belgium's
cammino,
history
a
calls
ritrovare
Europe
il
to
suo
return
vero
to its
volto,
path,
a
to
investire
rediscover its
nuovamente
true
sul
identity,
futuro,
and invest
aprendosi
once
alla
again in the
vita,
future
alla speranza,
by opening self to life and to hope, by overcoming the demographic winter
della guerra.
and the torments of war.
Sono due calamità.
These are two calamities at this time.
Stiamo vedendo che
The wars
può
that are
trasformarsi
happening
in una guerra mondiale e l'inverno demografico.
and the demographic winter.
In questo dobbiamo essere pratici.
This we have to be practical. Have children.
Fare figli.
Have children.
La Chiesa Cattolica vuole essere una presenza che, testimoniando la propria fede in Cristo risorto,
Bearing witness to its faith in the risen Christ, the Catholic Church wishes to be a presence offering individuals, families, societies, and nations a hope both ancient and ever new, a presence helping everyone to face challenges and difficulties, not with frivolous enthusiasm or bleak pessimism, but with the certainty that humanity loved by God is not destined to collapse into nothingness, but is eternally called to goodness and peace. Fixing her gaze on Jesus, the Church always recognizes herself as the disciple who follows her Master with fear and trembling. While she knows that she herself is holy, for she has been founded by the Lord, she experiences at the same time the fragility and shortcomings of her members. Who are never fully up to the task entrusted to them, since it is always beyond their capacity. The Church proclaims the good news that can fill our hearts with joy. The works of charity and countless examples of love for our neighbor. The Church seeks to offer concrete and trusted signs of the love that motivates her. Yet she also lives in a specific culture, within the thinking of a given age, that she sometimes helps to shape, and to which at other times she is subjected. And her members do not always understand and live the message of the gospel in all its purity and fullness. In this perennial coexistence of light and shadow, the Church carries out her mission, often with examples of great generosity and heartfelt dedication, But sadly, at times, with the emergence of painful counter-testimonies. I refer to the tragic instances of child abuse, to which the Prime Minister has just referred, and as well as the King, which is a scourge that the Church is addressing firmly and decisively by listening to and accompanying those who have been wounded, and by implementing a prevention program throughout the world. Brothers and sisters, this is a shame. A shame that oggi that we have to accept and apologize for the plague of abuse of minors. You think of the time of the Holy Innocents, when today in the same church there are crimes like the crimes of Herod at the time of the Innocents. It's shameful, and we have to seek to resolve it, this situation, with humility, with Christian humility, and do everything to make sure that this will never happen again. When you say that the great majority of things happen in the family or wherever, the Church has to ask forgiveness for this. Not for what other people have done, but for what has happened within the Church.
Sono stato rattristato a questo proposito di un altro fenomeno.
I'm also saddened of another phenomenon, and having learned about the practice of forced adoptions that also took place here in Belgium in the past. In these poignant stories, we see how the bitter fruit of wrongdoing and criminality was mixed in with what was unfortunately the prevailing view in all parts of society at the time. This was so much the case that many people believed in conscience that they were doing something good for both the child and the mother. Frequently, the family and other actors in society, including within the Church, thought that in order to avoid the stigma that unfortunately fell upon unmarried mothers in those times, it would be preferable for the good of both the child and the mother that the child be given up for adoption. There were even cases in which some women were not given the possibility of choosing between keeping their children or giving them up for adoption. And this happens today in some cultures, in some countries. As the successor of the Apostle Peter, I pray to the Lord that the Church will always find within herself the strength to bring clarity and never conform to the predominant culture, even when that culture uses, in a manipulative way, values derived from the gospel, drawing from it inauthentic conclusions that cause suffering and exclusion. I pray that the leaders of the nations, by looking at Belgium and its history, will be able to learn from it. In this way, they can spare their peoples endless misfortunes and sorrow. I likewise pray that those in government will know how to take up the responsibility, the risk, and the honor of peace, knowing how to avoid the danger, disgrace, and absurdity of war. I pray too that they will fear the judgment of conscience, of history, and of God, so that their hearts and minds will be converted so as always to put the common good first. in this moment in which the economy is developing so much, I want to emphasize that in some countries, investments are dedicated to the arms trade. Your Majesty, ladies and gentlemen, the motto of my visit to your country is En route avec espérance, on the way with hope. The fact that espérance, hope, is written with a capital letter leads me to reflect that hope is not merely something to be carried in our baggage on a journey, no. Instead, hope is a gift from God. It is to be carried humbly, that never disappoints us. Hope must be carried in our hearts. It is a gift from God that is to be carried in our hearts. I'd like to leave you then, ladies and gentlemen, with the following wish. For you and for all those living in Belgium, may you always ask this gift from the Holy Spirit, hope, and welcome it in order to walk together with hope along the path of life and history. The words of our Holy Father, following remarks from His Majesty King Philippe of Belgium and the Prime Minister. Alexander de Croo, with the Pope highlighting some issues that were addressed by His Majesty and by the Prime Minister, notably the crisis of abuse, which has struck this country very hard. Also the issue of forced adoptions, which is a practice that was very common, especially as the Holy Father mentioned, throughout the 50s, 60s, and 70s of the last century. And as the Pope further mentioned, that continues in some parts of the world today. At the beginning of his address, the Holy Father highlighted Belgium's role. He said more than once, spoke very eloquently about the importance of Belgium in Europe especially, and throughout the world. Of course, both the King and the Prime Minister also highlighted Belgium's commitment to its duties and its role and mission throughout the world. The Holy Father is going to be continuing his stay in Belgium with a speech later this afternoon to university professors at the University of Leuven at 4:30 p.m. Rome time. And with the Holy Father's departure, this morning's broadcast is drawing to a close. On behalf of Vatican Radio, I would like to thank our partner stations, including EWTN TV, Catholic Faith Network in America, Salt and Light TV, Radio Maria England, Shalom World TV, Atmadarshan TV, Catholic TV, Luminous Radio India, and Radio Maria Papua New Guinea. For full coverage of the encounter this morning with civil authorities, and all the events during the Pope's apostolic journey, which began yesterday in Luxembourg and is continuing in Belgium, we do invite you to visit the Vatican News web portal, as well as our Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and YouTube accounts. Do join us again this afternoon at 4:30 p.m. Rome time for Pope Francis' meeting with university professors at the Catholic University of Leuven. Special thanks this morning to our producers and technicians here in studio. And thanks to all of you for joining us this morning. My name is Christopher Wells. It's been a great pleasure providing the English language translation and commentary for this morning's encounter. Praise be Jesus Christ. Laudetur Jesus Christus.